Shalom, people. It's goody. I'm gonna get right into it. The reality that I want to talk about right now is the fact that we paying an income tax. Everybody, it's tax season, right? Everybody's excited. Ooh, we about to get a tax return. Even though they took hella bread from you, you about to get a bullshit tax return. And what I want to know is why are we paying taxes on our income? Like, I know we were told to do it, fill out the 1040, W-2, and all that other fuckery. Shameless plug. No gun. Shit. Anyway, um, income tax. I want to know why we paying it. Why are we paying an income tax? I want to know. So let's get into it. Where is the law? Do any of you know the law? Have you seen the law, or are you just paying income tax because that's what you were told to do? It's what I did. Right? I just filed voluntarily. Um, and I don't want to do it anymore. I want to keep my bread, especially with the prices of every goddamn thing. And it doesn't look like they're going down. It looks like they're going to be taken under control, right? With Trump's tariffs, everything's going to be higher. And I'm okay with that. As long as I ain't got to pay no fucking tax. Now, do you people want to pay taxes? Do you want to pay taxes? Is that what you want to do? You want to let them take however much they take from you and then give you back some bullshit little return? And you be excited in a motherfucker for that little bullshit return. When you got to keep the tape, how did they tax your income and then you got to pay for shit and pay tax on top of that? Like the fuck, the money's already been taxed. Now we're being taxed again. There's some fuckery going on, and I don't like it. So I want you to help me understand it so that I don't feel crazy about paying taxes. Because pretty soon I'm gonna be like, fuck that, I ain't gonna pay it. I'm just gonna be like, fuck you. Um, so help me understand this tax bullshit because I want to know. Now, in 2006, I saw a documentary by Aaron Russo. It was called America, Freedom to Fascism. It was all about taxes. He had some heavy hitters in there. One particular, Sherry Jackson. I followed her from she started downloading, or rather uploading her YouTube videos. She's the first person that I remember hearing about that there's no law that requires us to pay taxes. She was an auditor for IRS. Anyway, I'm gonna go to this documentary, right? We're gonna talk. I'm gonna talk about it. Anybody want to chime in? I'm with that. Um, till then, just roll with me. Or thank you for rolling with me because this shit about to get real. Because again, I don't understand, and I can't find the law. Maybe one of you motherfuckers know the law. And don't hit me with the 16th Amendment. That shit vague. And I don't get why my income, your income, our income is being taxed both on the federal level and on the state level. It ain't funding shit. It ain't funding shit. They said it funds roads. You live in Jersey, you know the roads ain't shit nowhere in Jersey. Even the most upscale community got certain sections that the roads are shit. So we know that money ain't going there. Education in New Jersey, with the exception of some affluent towns like Upper Saddle River, Hohokus, Montclair, and other places, you know. But generally, education sucks in Jersey. What else does it fund? Social services, whatever, right? I don't want to pay taxes, and I don't know. Maybe you don't either. So let's check out this documentary first. Let me do this. Let me put this disclaimer up. Right? Y'all can read, but I'll read it for you. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act. Was that 1976? Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a permitted. That sounds retarded. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit educational or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. All right, whatever. Basically, this is for educational purposes only. So, with that being said, right, let's get into this documentary, right? First, yeah. Pull it up here, right? And let's go. This is the opening part of it. So I'm just going to start playing it. You can chime in at any point if anybody's watching. Listen, I don't suspect anyone is at the moment, but let's get it. And if I sound all right, let me know. If I sound crazy, let me know, because I'm using antiquated equipment, and gotta start somewhere, right? So fuck it, here it is. Let's go.
And I care not who makes it.
Hold on. Let's go back. Let's go back. That was way too far. Here we go. I don't know who George Orwell is. He wrote the book 1984 and a couple other books. What were they? See, hold on, let me find a couple of titles by him so that y'all know who it is. I'm sure y'all read 1984. At least Gen X niggas read it. Because I think it was required reading when we were in school. Let me just pull out a couple of his titles. Oh yeah, Animal Farm. I read that too. 1984, Animal Farm. I know that one. He got a bunch of books here. Clearly, I haven't read most of his shit. I read 1984 and Animal Farm. So Animal Farm was good as hell, and so was 1984. But yeah, that's all I read. So, but he got a bunch of other books. Look them up. All right, let's go.
The year was 1913. Woodrow Wilson was president, and powerful banking interests, who had been trying for years, finally achieved their long-term goal of a silent coup d'etat by taking control of the American government. The first thing they did to accomplish their takeover was convince Secretary of State Philander Knox to lie to the American people and tell them that the 16th Amendment, the Income Tax Amendment, had been legally ratified by the states when it was not. The bankers knew that this tax would ultimately end up in their pockets. Because of this fraud, the American people were led to believe there was now a tax on their labor, Congress and the president are completely aware of this fraud, and it was even cited in a recent court case.
All right, check that out. This is U.S. District Court Judge James C. Fox. So y'all can read, right? 2003. If you examine the 16th Amendment carefully, you would find that a sufficient number of states never ratified that amendment. A sufficient number of states, which means that they didn't have enough people to ratify it for it to become law. I don't know if that's still true today, but that was in 2003. So I don't know. Again, let's see what they say, because I can't find the fucking law. And I want you people to tell me where the goddamn law is. Help me. Because I don't want to be an asshole, be the only person. I mean, there's 97 million people who don't pay taxes, right? But whatever. I don't want to be one of them if I'm obligated under the law, right? Where is the law? Where's the law? Like, we Jews, right? And according to our system, where there is no law, there is no transgression. So help me out.
That very same year, the bankers committed their second and by far the most diabolical fraud ever perpetrated on the American people by bribing senators to pass the Federal Reserve Act without the required constitutional amendment.
All in favor, say aye.
They did this during Christmas vacation, where many senators were home celebrating the holidays with their families. And that's how the unconstitutional Federal Reserve Act came into being. They were very clever, and they understood that whoever issued the money for America would control the government.
These George H.W., William Jefferson Clinton, and George W. All fucking criminals, every one of them. I bet y'all didn't know this fucker here, this fucker, right here, this fucker, this one. I bet y'all didn't know that, according to some sources, he's codenamed the oil man from Texas. And he was at the book depository the day JFK was assassinated. But, that's conspiracy theory, right? But look into that. That fucker was there. He's the only person who was alive at that time, still alive, when they asked, what were you doing on that day? And that fucker said he has no recollection of what he was doing that day. Everybody who was alive then can tell you what they were doing and where they were, except that fucker. We already know this guy, right? He was getting head in the Oval Office. I ain't mad at him. I'd have got head in the Oval Office too, in the world. I'm a repentant man now. This fucker, fool me once, he can't fool me again. That fucker started a whole war, weapons of mass destruction that never existed. Prick. Fuck them all. Anyway, let's go.
The bankers won, and the American people lost, because most politicians will sell their soul for $1.
Man.
And now the Federal Reserve could issue dollars legally. As Mayor Rothschild said, give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws. He knew that he and the other bankers would now control the laws of the nation. Government gave these bankers one of its most important powers, and now had to borrow money from them and pay interest to finance the government. So the American people were forced to lower their standard of living and pay a graduated income tax to the government, just so the government could give these bankers more profits. President Woodrow Wilson, who signed the Federal Reserve Act into law, later said, in regret, I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is now controlled by its system of credit. We are no longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men.
So those dominant men are what we call today the elite, the 1%, fuckers who are in control, the shadow government, the people who tell the president what the fuck to do. Every president except Trump, he's a thorn in their ass, a thumb in their ass, a thorn in their side. He ain't taking orders from nobody. He doing what the fuck he want. And the country is divided because he's actually doing his job. And some of you people don't agree, but you know, who gives a fuck? They're gonna do what they're gonna do, whether you agree or not. So let's get back to it.
The Federal Reserve was created by Congress in 1913, and it was entrusted with the power granted originally to the Congress by the U.S. Constitution to coin money and regulate the value thereof.
What's your name?
Jan Crafting?
Hi, Jen. I'm Aaron Russo. I produced the movie
Is this a joke? Am I gonna
No,
make
that's not a joke.
Okay,
No. I produced the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and The Rose with Bette Midler, many movies. I'm doing a feature film. And my film is about my quest to find out whether or not people pay income taxes. Do you pay an income tax?
Yes, I do.
You do?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a law that requires you to pay an income tax?
Have I ever read it? You mean in the page, black and white? No, no.
So you pay the income tax, I assume?
Of late. Well, actually, no, I didn't file last year, but
Okay.
I'm sorry, is this on film? No, I paid my tax.
My question to you is, have you ever seen a law that says you have to pay an income tax?
All right. See what I'm saying? This is the question that I want answered. I want to see the law. I want you to show me the law too. And this goes to whoever's listening, you know, that can make a fucking difference. Show me the law and I'll continue to pay tax. If there is no fucking law, I'm not paying that dime, not another dime. Go fuck yourself. That goes to the Congress, the Senate, the president, the vice president, and every other motherfucker, Treasury, everybody who's involved in this, particularly the IRS. And funny, the IRS, THEIRS, that shit says theirs. And fuck you, IRS, and everybody else who's involved in this. You want me to pay? Show me the law. Let's get back to it.
The law is that guy that wears that badge and a gun. That's the one that puts you in jail. That's the law.
Actually, I can't stand the IRS. Okay, they're evil.
Do you have any fear of the IRS?
Not really, because I'm Canadian.
I think it's actually unconstitutional, is what I've heard. But to avoid any hassle, I pay it.
If there was no law and I wasn't afraid of them coming and taking me to jail, absolutely, I wouldn't pay taxes.
Okay, then no, I wouldn't pay income taxes.
It's a no-brainer. You wouldn't pay it.
I wouldn't pay it.
Why would anybody?
Because they, that's what they tell us we must do, else we're bad Americans.
Would you pay it?
No.
Would you pay it?
No.
Why would you pay taxes if you're an actor?
The income tax is not legal because it would be a direct tax and it is not apportioned as the Constitution demands.
If it's against the Constitution, then why are we doing it?
Hold on. I'm letting that go by too fast. Y'all should pay attention. Look at that shit. That's just a little bit. Got more, right? Court fines, indirect taxes, dog license, estate tax, federal unemployment tax, fishing license. Look, tax every fucking thing. An inheritance tax. Fuck, tax on the money. And then the fuckers got the nerve to charge interest. Fuck you. I don't pay interest. I'm a Jew. We don't pay that shit. Local income tax, luxury tax, liquor tax, penalties on top of tax. Fuck the IRS. Marriage license, Medicare, parking, property, real estate tax, septic, damn, you gotta pay for your shit. Service charge. Read it, read it. Fucking kidding me? Tolls, school tax, sales tax. Truckers got to pay a road users tax. Them fuckers decided to just stop for one day. We wouldn't get shit. I fuck with the truckers. And then Social Security. Trump did away with that. Tax and Social Security. Fuck you, no more. That ain't happening. Unemployment tax, telephone, excise tax. What the fuck is that? Look at that. Telephone. The fuck? God damn, look at that. Oh, bridges and tunnels, traffic, utility. Look. Workers' compensation. God damn. Look at that. All right, let's go.
I really expected that, of course, there's a law that you can point to in the law book, the code, that requires you to file a tax return. Of course there is. Maybe I don't know what it is right then as he was speaking to me, but sure. So naively, I agreed to go off and research it and get back to him. 3.5 months later, I was at that point where I couldn't find the statute that clearly made a person liable, at least not me and most people I know, and I had no choice in my mind except to resign.
I had to leave the IRS because I presented evidence that I had accumulated indicating that the
This guy's name. Joe Bannister. He's an IRS criminal investigator. I'm just saying, I know y'all can read, but just in case. I'm an uppity nigga, so I like to read and I like to, make sure y'all know what the fuck's going on. Anyway, my bad for my potty mouth. I gotta work on that. That's how I speak, though. I've been speaking like this since I was like 12 years old. I'm an old nigga now, so it's hard to break that habit. In my defense, though, first word I use, I can replace it with 10 other words, at least 10. I just choose not to. Anyway, Joe Bannister. Joe fucking Dirt.
The agency was violating the law and violating people's rights. And I asked the agency for a response to my sincere concerns. And the answer I got was that they would not respond to my concerns and that they would provide me with the paperwork necessary to tender my resignation.
But We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education put a full-page ad in the USA Today on July 7th, 2000. And within the body of that ad was a $50,000 challenge for anyone that could show the law. And to me, $50,000 is a lot of money. So I went after that and did the research based on the fact that I thought, let's put this baby to bed. I'm hearing all these rumors. I'm going to kill two birds with one stone. I'll answer these people's questions that are asking me, and then I'll win this $50,000. And, based on the research that I did throughout the year 2000 and that I'm still doing, I have not found that law. I've asked Congress, we've asked a lot of people in the IRS commissioners, helpers. They can't answer, because if they answer, the American people are going to know that this whole thing is a fraud.
I was surprised to hear these highly trained and decorated IRS agents telling me there was no law requiring American citizens to file a 1040 or to pay an income tax on their labor.
I haven't filed an federal income tax return since I left.
1999, approximately 67 million people don't file an income tax return.
I made a decision to go to Washington so I could attend the We the People Foundation press conference. They were going to serve a class action lawsuit on the IRS used to show the law that makes Americans liable to file a 1040 or to pay an income tax on their labor. I was very curious as to why the IRS refused to show the law, as it seemed such a simple thing to do. Yet I was skeptical about the foundation's claims. There had to be a law, right? I mean, we've all been told over and over and over again that
no answers, no taxes, no answers, no taxes, no answers, no taxes, no answers.
Most people believe that the income tax system is legal and that the revenue from the tax is used in the public interest. However, there is a substantial, conclusive body of evidence that proves that our income tax system represents the most pernicious form of tyranny. It is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated by government against the working men and women of America.
American citizens, along with the foundation, have been asking the IRS to specifically provide them with the underlying legal foundation upon which they administer and enforce the personal income tax laws in our country.
At the national level, when people would attempt to contact somebody of a much higher authority, say the commissioner, same kind of thing. They would get answers that were in effect non-answers.
There are a group of people standing outside today who assert that no law requires you to pay taxes and that you will not answer their petition to the government as to whether they're required to pay taxes. Are they required to pay taxes?
I've been paying my taxes ever since I had my first job, and I think it's a fundamental construct of our nation that those of us who expect and demand the services from our government that the government provides, be they the protection of our country through the military, or be they the education of our children, or be they the protection of our environment, that we must pay for those services. So yes, I think there is a fundamental obligation, and that it's an understood and well accepted one.
Joe Bannister and I had a meeting in the White House with President Clinton's economic advisor, Jason Furman. He accepted the remonstrance for the president. On June 2nd, I called and spoke with him. His words were, "We have decided that the issue of the legality of the income tax is not a high priority matter for the White House, and we will not be participating in any conference on the subject."
I don't know. Did y'all hear that? The White House don't give a fuck. It's not a priority for them. Let's see what this said here. What you say, bastard? We cannot be so fixated on our desire to preserve the rights of ordinary Americans. What the fuck? He said this in '93. We can't be so fixated on our desire to preserve the rights of ordinary Americans. What the fuck does that mean? Means that he doesn't give a shit about your rights, people. Never has, never will. I don't think any president did. I think Kennedy did. I think Reagan did. And I think, what's his name, Trump does. I don't recall in my lifetime any president. And prior to being a repentant man, not only was I a Puerto Rican, which I am no longer Puerto Rican, soy Boricua, just for the record, in the interest of transparency and full disclosure. But I was a diehard, blue-blooded, law-abiding, NRA card-carrying member, an American who exercised my rights. Because anyone who knows me, I was about that life. Could tell me nothing. I would tell a cop to go fuck himself if he violated my rights. Again, I'm an uppity nigga. So this type of talk right here, this shit right here, this shit bothers me. Because look at these two fucking demons. They don't want to preserve the rights of ordinary Americans. What the fuck? Only the extraordinary Americans, they're the rights that you preserve. Anyway, let's go. I'm upsetting myself.
I decided not to eat until my death or until the government agreed to send their experts to meet with the experts from the tax honesty movement. And with the help of Congressman Bartlett, a deal was made.
I'm very pleased that through these several trying weeks and now months, that we have secured the agreement of the IRS and the Justice Department, because some of the questions are beyond the purview of IRS, that they will both attend a public symposium where these issues can be formally addressed.
Last Thanksgiving, DOJ and IRS notified Congressman Bartlett that they would not participate. Congressman Bartlett then waited until late January. He informed me that he would not be participating.
Why do you think you've been able to get away with not paying or filing your income taxes for so long?
Well, first of all, I've not gotten away with anything. I'm not hiding from anyone. I'm simply asking the IRS to show me the laws that apparently require me to do these things, and they are suspiciously reticent to answer questions from me. And of course, there are millions of other people, many other organizations who have attempted to get answers. They act very suspiciously when asked to simply sit down at the table with the American people and discuss what their obligations are. Rather than pulling up a chair, they pull out a club.
As a matter of fact, David K. Johnston of the New York Times asked Terry Lemons of the IRS, why won't the IRS answer the questions set forth in the petitions from the American people? Mr. Lemon's response was, the government is answering the questions through enforcement actions in the courts. This is a very chilling remark on the government's use of brute force instead of civility and logic.
The federal government itself refuses to provide the American people who are coercively being subjected to this extraction of their private property without any underlying legal justification. There is no law that requires the average American worker in the private sector to pay a direct unapportioned tax on their labor and compensation for services. There is no law.
Okay. All right. I don't know. He said there is no law. A lot of people are saying, you see, so far in this documentary, that's the whole spiel, right? The whole purpose of this documentary is to uncover the law that requires everyday Americans, John and Jane Q. Public, to pay an income tax. And yeah, I think it's bullshit. I think we should stop paying. All of us. I don't know how to make that happen because we're all so divided. Black, white, Republican, Democrat, left, right, conservative, liberal, homosexual, heterosexual. We're all separate. But the one thing that we all have to do, at least we've been led to believe that we have to do, is pay that fucking income tax. And again, I'm done. As of today, I'm not paying that fucking dime, not one dime, until I see the law. You can all kiss my ass. Go fuck yourselves. And again, don't let your kids watch this because, again, I'm a potty mouth. A real American. I'll tell you to go fuck yourself. So fuck you, it's the government, IRS, and all of you who are involved in this. I'm not paying that dime until you show me the law. Let's get back to it.
The march will stop in front of the IRS building.
They are now going to serve a class action lawsuit on the IRS. Very courageous.
My name is Charles Bell, and I'm here to serve this complaint on behalf of the American people to the Internal Revenue Service. The complaint is accompanied by an affidavit that's under the hand of Robert Schultz.
And real quick, you see how he said no cameras? That's not the law. The law is that you can film all public officials in the course of their day because they're public servants. So you could film courts, you could film cops, you could film everybody, even if they post it. And they'll tell you, no, well, we posted it and you can't do it. Fuck you. The law says that I can film you. So don't push me. I'm about to start, doing some shit. Because I want to know about this. I think I'm going to go down to the IRS and ask them for the law. I'll take y'all with me. Anyway, let's get back.
Case was served. We'll call you with the case number. Case has been filed. We'll call you with the case number. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate your time.
America, baby! Freedom!
Today, effectively, the people have said to their servant government that that our rights are not going to be any longer denied, and that we're going to have answers to our petition, our legitimate lawful petitions for redress of grievances, which are guaranteed in the First Amendment to our Constitution. So once and for all, we will get an answer.
On August 31st, 2005, federal judge Emmett Sullivan ruled the government does not have to answer the American people's questions, even though it is guaranteed in the First Amendment. Our courts have made a decision that government have to show the law that it enforces. And the press never reported on this. Have we given this judge the authority to overrule the Constitution, the very foundation of American life?
I believe that in both spirit and substance, our tax system has come to be un-American. Death and taxes may be inevitable, but unjust taxes are not.
That was the last president of the United States besides Trump. We haven't had a president. Not we, but America hasn't had a president since Reagan. Fuck Barack Obama. He was not a president, and he's not the children of our people. By his own admissions, his daddy's a Kenyan, his mama's a cracker. He's not our people. All of you who believe he's our people is because y'all fooled. Like you thought Kamala Harris was a fucking African-American black woman. That bitch is Irish and Indian. She is, and I don't give a shit that she's melanated, and I don't care that she was born in Jamaica. You know how many Chinese people are born in Jamaica? Does that make them fucking Jamaicans? No. Yeah, legally they're born in the land and they're called by that as citizens, but they're not a fucking Jamaican. They're a Chinaman. Like white people born in Puerto Rico. You mean to tell me that that white man is a Puerto Rican? The fuck out of here, stupid. Y'all dumb as hell if y'all believe that. Anyway, there hasn't been a president since Reagan.
The country's taxes must be fixed, and I know what to do with it. If you think you're paying too much now, just wait till I get through with it.
Now, Mr. Hanley, I'd like to ask you something. What does the government do with all the money we give them in taxes?
When President Reagan was elected, one of the first things that he did was appoint a blue ribbon panel of business people headed by Peter Grace, and is commonly referred to as the Grace Commission. And their job was to research all the various areas of the federal government and make a report. One of the quotes from the Grace Commission is, 100% of what is collected is absorbed solely by interest on the federal debt. All individual income tax revenues are gone before 1 nickel is spent on the services taxpayers expect from government.
If we pay the salaries of the congressmen and the senators, we're supporting them, aren't we?
Well, yes.
Yes. Well, then why can't we list them as dependents and deduct them?
People are brainwashed. People have been told, that you need this income tax system to fund government, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, my question is, well, if that's true, how did we fund government from 1776 to 1913?
The main purpose of the income tax is not to raise revenue, but to redistribute wealth
and to control society.
A lot of people might say, well, gee, if there wasn't an income tax, what would happen to education? They don't understand that education is paid for the most part, out of state and local taxes, your property tax. People might say, well, how are we going to build and maintain our highways? If there's no money coming into the government, we need our highways. There is a tax on every gallon of gasoline that people buy. Proceeds from the income tax do not pay for highway construction. The amount of money that we spend on defense is exactly equal to the amount of corporate income tax, which is quite legal and quite constitutional.
I think we should not want the income tax for several reasons. One is that it is the instrument of totalitarianism. It is the means by which the government can manipulate people and put you into a condition of servitude.
Every year, you give the federal government a form that says, here's how all my money worked. If you lie, you could go to prison. So you're required to give them a financial statement that under, the force of law could put you in impeccable, right? And under the law, they're supposed to do the same. They're supposed to give you back a financial statement that says, here's what we did with your money. Except you comply and they don't. In fiscal 99, the Department of Defense had 1.1 trillion of undocumentable adjustments. The following year, they had 2.3 trillion of undocumentable adjustments.
After interest payments and government waste, not one penny collected from the tax on your labor pays for the services you expect from the government. He already said that.
I decided to call the IRS. I spoke to Anthony Burke in Media Relations. He was very nice to me, and I explained to him that I was an award-winning film producer and that I was doing a documentary on the IRS. He seemed a bit stunned by this, then explained to me that Commissioner Everson nor anybody else would go on film to discuss the income tax. But he did say he would call me back. I thanked him for that, but I couldn't help wondering, why was the government making it so difficult for people to see the law? So I decided to bring my crew down to the IRS building to see if I could find some employees to interview. And here's what happened.
I said you cannot film here, that's it. Who are you to tell me I can't film here? What's the law? Just tell me where the law is that says that. Can you show me the law that says I can't film here? Is America a free country? I told him they couldn't film here, and he's asking 9 million questions. I told him that's the federal government law. Hey, I told him he couldn't film here. He's telling me he's a citizen and all that. So I couldn't film him. I'm saying, where's the law that says I can't film here? And I'm asking another question, sir.
Then Homeland Security showed up because I was such a threat to Washington.
You got a driver's license? Yeah, I do. Put that away for me.
After convincing Homeland Security I really wasn't Osama bin Laden, I kept wishing the IRS would allow me to interview somebody. Why wouldn't they show the law? What were they so nervous about? I began to have a frightening thought. What if it was our own government we had to be afraid of? With that disturbing thought in my mind, I went to see a group of tax experts.
You can look through the statutes and look for the law that requires you to pay. And when you do that, you can't identify a law that requires the average person in America who earns a wage and works in private business to pay an income tax.
The Constitution allows for two kinds of taxes. They're called direct and indirect.
The federal government in the Constitution can tax almost anything, as long as it apportions the tax if it's direct.
The indirect tax is, for example, an excise tax. I can avoid the excise tax on gasoline. I can choose to ride my bicycle. I can avoid the excise tax on tobacco. I can choose not to smoke, or I can grow my own tobacco.
The
income tax which is being applied now doesn't meet the criteria of either direct or indirect taxes.
The IRS claims that in 1913, the 16th Amendment, the Income Tax Amendment, allowed the government a third form of taxation. What was the Supreme Court's ruling on that?
The Supreme Court in the case of Stanton versus Baltic Mining. I mean, what could be clearer than this? The provisions of the 16th Amendment conferred no new power of taxation.
The Russo case also said that the 16th Amendment did not impose any new taxes and did not change any of the taxing restrictions of the Constitution.
There were also several other major Supreme Court cases in that same period from 1916 up until about 1923.
Stratton Independence versus Hobart, Southern Pacific versus Lowe, Bowers versus Kerbo Empire, Burnett versus Harmel, Doyle versus Mitchell.
It's actually very simple. Congress tried to enact an income tax in 1894. The Supreme Court said that's unconstitutional. When the Supreme Court says something is unconstitutional, it's unconstitutional. They tried again in 1913, and the Supreme Court said the 16th Amendment conferred no new power of taxation. So if they didn't have it then, and they didn't get it, they don't have it. There is no constitutional basis for a tax on the wages of Americans living and working in the 50 states of the Union. Period. End of argument.
End of argument. Hold on. Get out of the way so y'all can read that. In substance, the court holds that the 16th Amendment did not empower the federal government to levy a new tax. All right. I'll take your word on it.
I have a letter here from Daniel Inouye's office of the United States Senate that says, based on the research performed by the Congressional Research Service, there is no provisions which specifically and unequivocally require an individual to pay an income tax. Period. End of story. There is no law, and to date, nobody has been able to show that there is a law for the average American citizen working day in and day out to pay an income tax.
The definition of income in the Constitution was given in the Eisner versus Macomber case, and it turns on gains or profits that are made from some activity.
Doyle versus Mitchell, 247 U.S. 179, 1918. Here's what he said. The idea of gain or increase arising from corporate activities. In other words, it doesn't mean wages, it doesn't mean dividends, it doesn't mean alimony. It means a gain or a profit arising from corporate activity.
These liens that are recorded against people by the government for tax liens are nothing more than allegations. They are non-substantive. They have never been determined by a neutral third party, such as a court, to have one shred of validity.
If you ever get a notice of an audit or anything else, the first thing you should do is a Freedom of Information Act request for records that they're using to substantiate or justify the audit.
There is nothing in the Internal Revenue Code that creates any such thing as an income tax evasion or crime. There's nothing in the code that allows IRS agents to seize property. The government is involved in judicial blackmail. The government knows that if it legally seizes somebody's property, that person doesn't have the funds and he can't even get a lawyer who can help him.
I conducted investigations in the Title 18, the Criminal Code, the U.S. Criminal Code. And in there, the statutes and the regulations are very specific as to what's violating the statute. In the Internal Revenue Code, Title 26, there's nothing specific in there. I mean, even the FBI feared the IRS.
You have to understand that an agency which will unlawfully impose a tax that doesn't exist is not going to care. If we, the people, don't know what our rights are, they're not going to tell us.
If Americans just learned that the IRS was actually knowingly deceiving them, that would be enough for them to rise up and put a stop to it.
This small booklet includes the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence. This is a document that every citizen should read. It's a document which freed an entire nation.
How many of you, Black, white, Jew, or Gentile, Protestant, Catholic, Democrat, Republican, particularly Democrat, because I'm sure most Republicans know their rights. Democrats that I know can't tell you the text of the Second Amendment except that they have the freedom of speech and the right to keep guns, but they can't give you the text. Anyway, how many of you know your God-given, federally protected, enumerated rights? How many of you know them? Bet it's not many. But whatever.
This is the Internal Revenue Code, and this document, and the unlawful application of this document by the Internal Revenue Service has enslaved the nation that this document attempted to free.
I was very impressed with the people in the tax honesty movement. They weren't kooks. They were highly intelligent, well-researched, and very genuine. I was wondering why I never heard about all these Supreme Court decisions in the media. So I really wanted the IRS's point of view, because to get the true story, it was imperative I hear both sides. I kept wishing Anthony Burke would call me back. He seemed like an honest man. I then proceeded to call my message machine.
Hi, this message is for Aaron Russo. This is Anthony Burke at the Internal Revenue Service. Let me suggest some people that you might want to think about talking to. One would be Don Alexander, who's a former commissioner who's here in town in Washington. Another would be Sheldon Cohen, who is both a former commissioner and former chief counsel. All those guys, I think, can answer your question about...
I'm picking all in my nose on camera. It's fucked up. My bad.
That you have to pay taxes.
Wow, good news, I thought. So I called Sheldon Cohen because he used to be the IRS commissioner. He wrote the tax code, and he was also general counsel to the IRS.
This guy here, this guy is a real piece of work, a real asshole. Look at his face. Hold on.
He is a true expert, and I couldn't find a better person to answer my questions. He graciously agreed to my interview. The reason I'm doing this documentary is because there are many people in America today who believe that there's no law that requires them to pay an income tax or file a 1040. And there are many people going to jail for it, fighting over it.
The Internal Revenue Code is authorized by the 16th Amendment.
I think it should be clarified. I think government should be transparent to the people. Why doesn't the IRS commissioner sit down with them and just explain it in clear English? Why?
I don't think they really care. They don't think. I think they're just playing word games.
You don't think they're sincere people?
No, I don't think they're sincere people.
What does voluntary compliance mean? And why does the IRS code say it's voluntary to comply, not mandatory?
All right, so let's read that. 26 Code Federal Regulation, Chapter 1. (4103) edition. The purpose of publishing revenue rulings and revenue procedures in the Internal Revenue Bulletin is to promote correct and uniform application of the tax laws by Internal Revenue Service employees and
that's a word.
Let me go back a little bit. Let me just go back just a tad. Hope that went too far over.
Believe that there's no law that requires them to pay an income tax or file a 1040.
I'm sorry, I had to go back.
People going to jail for it, fighting over it.
The Internal Revenue Code is authorized by the 16th Amendment.
I think it should be clarified. I think government should be transparent to the people. Why doesn't the IRS commissioner sit down with them and just explain it in clear English? Why?
I don't think they really care. They don't think. I think they're just playing word games.
You don't think they're sincere people?
No, I don't think they're sincere people.
What does voluntary compliance mean? And what?
All right, there it is. to promote correct and uniform application of the tax laws by Internal Revenue Service employees and to assist taxpayers in attaining maximum voluntary compliance by informing service personnel and the public of national office interpretations of the Internal Revenue laws, related statutes, treaties, regulations, and statements of service procedures affecting the rights and duties of taxpayers. Therefore, issues and answers involving substantive tax law under the jurisdiction of the Internal Revenue Service will be published in the Internal Revenue Rules. Yeah. That's time I'll never get back, but that's good shit. Basically, I'm right here, maximum voluntary compliance, right? Maximum voluntary compliance. So,
why does the IRS code say it's voluntary to comply, not mandatory?
That's a word euphemism we use. We use voluntary compliance when we talk about traffic signals. Most people at 2 o'clock in the morning, do you stop at a red light?
Yeah.
Is there a cop there?
Well, sometimes I don't.
Well, I do, and most of us do. Most of us do.
Right.
But that's voluntary compliance.
That was a complete perversion of logic.
Word.
Traffic laws state that it is mandatory to stop at a red light. The IRS code says it's voluntary to comply.
Word.
Mandatory and voluntary are the complete opposite of each other. Yet he wants us to believe that they mean the same thing.
Your income tax is a 100% voluntary tax, and your liquor tax is a 100% enforced tax. Enforced tax. The situation is as different as night and day. Dwight E. Avis, head of the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax Division, Bureau of Internal Revenue. Okay, so whoever that is, well, of course, head of the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax Division, Bureau of Internal Revenue. Your income tax is a 100% voluntary tax. So, sounds to me like it's voluntary, y'all. Why are we paying it? Why are you volunteering your money to these crooks in Capitol Hill, IRS, the Congress, the Senate, the Oval Office, the legislature, the judicial, and the executive? Why are you giving them your money? They printing money out of thin fucking air. How much did they send to Ukraine? How much do they give to the Middle East off the top, off the GDP?
So can the government criminally prosecute somebody of information put on their 1040?
Yes.
Right, so doesn't that violate the Fifth Amendment?
No.
But the Fifth Amendment says I don't have to do anything that incriminates myself.
Well, it doesn't incriminate you to put your income down.
But you said before I could be put in jail for it. The commissioner wants us to believe that although the IRS demands you fill out the 1040 and you can go to jail for it, that they are not violating your Fifth Amendment rights of self-incrimination. That is absurd. Isn't it true that the word income is not defined anywhere in the Internal Revenue Code?
The law says that the government has a right to tax income from any source derived.
So, but the word income is not defined in the code. It just says income without a definition of what income is.
That's right.
Correct?
Yeah.
But there are many different kinds of taxes. Well, then how can an American citizen know what income is if the code doesn't define it? If they're paying an income tax...
Because the courts have all defined it.
Do you remember what constitutional attorney Edwin Vieira said?
The definition of income in the Constitution was given in the Eisner versus Macomber case, and it turns on gains or profits that are made from some activity.
So the Supreme Court has ruled income is not wages, it's not labor, it's gain from corporate activity.
That's
I believe that a man's labor is his private property.
That's your view, but it's not the law.
The Supreme Court's even said your labor is your private property. When I go to work for somebody, it's a trade. It's an even exchange. I do some work, you give me some money.
Chief among such contracts is that of personal employment by which labor and other services are exchanged for money or other forms of property.
In 1916, we had the Bruce-Shaber case and the Stanton case. And the Bruce-Shaber case and the Stanton case said that the 16th Amendment gave the government no new taxing power.
I'm not going to argue the niceties of that with you.
And it came up again in a case called Peck versus Lowe, where the Supreme Court said the 16th Amendment did not extend Congress's taxing power to any new or accepted subjects. In other words, if you weren't taxable before the 16th, you weren't taxable after the 16th.
Today I interviewed a juror, who sat on a case, and they found the person not guilty for lack of filing, okay? And I asked her why they found him not guilty. And she said because the IRS couldn't show us the law that made him liable to file a 1040.
All they need to do, if there is a law, is to show us the law.
Show me the law.
Which, of course, they never did.
That's loud.
And the reason they didn't do it was why?
Because there is no law.
Title 26 requires you to file a return.
But doesn't Title 26 have to be in compliance with the Supreme Court decisions?
You're going to take a 1920 case and superimpose it on the whole Internal Revenue Code that was written after it? No, that's not.
I can't believe what I just heard.
Yeah, you hear this passage?
You're going to take a 1920 case and superimpose it on the whole Internal Revenue Code that was written after it? No, that's not.
Remember he said earlier the Internal Revenue Code was authorized by the 16th Amendment?
The Internal Revenue Code is authorized by the 16th Amendment.
Remember, the Supreme Court said the 16th Amendment did not give the government any new taxing power. These decisions have never been overturned. Let's listen further. Can the lower courts overrule the Supreme Court?
No.
How are they putting people in jail today for not paying a tax on their labor when the Supreme Court said they don't have to? Doesn't the IRS code have to be in compliance with the Supreme Court? That's my big question.
This is a waste of time.
Well,
because whatever I say, you're not going to believe.
He's right. I don't believe him. And neither should you. He wants us to believe we should obey the IRS code, which is being enforced in violation of the many Supreme Court decisions. If the Supreme Court made a decision...
Thank you, Aaron. I think we're finished.
I'm sorry, Mr. Cohen.
Well, I'm sorry that you constantly re-argue the point. You're liable because the law says that you're liable, and the courts say the law says you're liable, and that's why you're liable.
You see, he's talking about the lower courts, who are not in compliance with the Supreme Court, as they have to be. Doesn't the court have to be in compliance with the
Supreme Court has so held.
Where?
Where?
You caught me unprepared.
I'll come back.
Well, I don't want to do that.
But let me ask you a hypothetical question.
No. You're making silly arguments here.
Why is the Supreme Court decision a silly argument?
Well, because it's inapplicable.
That made my heart stop. He just said Supreme Court decisions do not apply to the IRS. That's the behavior you would expect from a totalitarian country, maybe China or Russia or Cuba, not from America. They're just making up the law as they go along. Now I knew the tax honesty movement was right. The IRS thrives on intimidation and fear, not by law. It's no different than a criminal protection racket, using force to extract your money from you. Then the former IRS commissioner, now working at a prestigious Washington law firm, threatens me. Watch.
Wow. Aaron, you understand Yiddish. Gornish helfen.
For those of you who don't understand Yiddish, that means nothing will help you. Now it all became clear. I understood why the IRS wouldn't go on camera and talk about where the law was. I understood why all the senators I called refused to be interviewed. There is no law.
Hold on, let me just move my picture so y'all can see all these fuckers. And remember, there is no law. There is no law, right? That's what he said. And he threatened him. I'm not paying another dime. Like,
and now you know what our political leaders and the courts have known for decades and have tried to cover up. The United States Constitution strictly forbids a direct, unapportioned tax on the wages and salaries of American citizens. The United States Supreme Court has consistently ruled that the income tax is a tax on profits and gains, not on labor and wages. On behalf of the American people, I challenge the IRS to show me a statute that allows a direct, unapportioned tax on the wages and labor of the American people. And if I'm wrong, I will give my most humble apologies to the IRS. If the IRS is wrong, and there is no law, then every person who's been jailed should be let out of jail immediately, and any assets seized should be returned to their rightful owners. If this is a nation of laws and a free country, then the IRS should show the law to the American people. I felt an overwhelming need to understand.
Okay. I'm going to end this part of that right here. I'll finish it tomorrow. It's, yeah, I'll finish it tomorrow. We'll go back a little bit. Just a little bit.
Understand why juries were finding innocent people guilty of not filing a their rightful owners. If this is a nation of laws and a free country, then the IRS
just going back
should
a little
show
bit.
the law to the American people.
All right, we're going to end it right there. Tomorrow, we'll pick it back up. All right? I don't know about you people, but I'm convinced that you don't have to pay a federal income tax or a state income tax on our labor, on our equity. So let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Right? We'll talk about it. But so far, I'm convinced, and I've been convinced for years, but I complied because, the IRS, big bad white people. But I'm not paying one more dime to these bastards. Not one more until I see the law. If any of you out there in Carajo land can show me the law, I'll be more than glad to comply with the law, but not an opinion, not a fuckery, not a something vague. I need the law. So, show me the law, okay? And tomorrow I'll get back to it. We'll finish up at least another part of it, all right? With that, shalom, people.